The rain-soaked evening crowd rushed past her, but Zurimbeki barely noticed. Her feet ached from a double shift. Her uniform smelled faintly of frying oil, and the tips she had earned could barely cover a loaf of bread. Yet she still managed a tired smile as she counted the small bills in her hand. That was when she saw him, a thin, trembling boy standing alone near the bus stop, his eyes hollow with hunger. Something in his gaze pierced her. Without hesitation, Zuri knelt, pressed her precious tip money into his palm, and whispered, "Please, eat something warm tonight." She didn't know his name. She didn't know his story, but the boy gazed at her like she had handed him the world. What Zuri didn't know was that this single act of kindness would shake an entire billionaire empire and rewrite her fate forever. Before we continue, tell us, where are you watching from, and what time is it there? And if you enjoy emotional African folktale dramas, kindly subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. Zuri woke before dawn, long before the city's traffic began, its impatient morning roar. Her cramped single room was still dark, lit only by the flicker of a weak street lamp outside the cracked window. She lay there for a moment, staring at the ceiling stained by years of rainwater and neglect, wondering how life had become such a constant battle. But she didn't allow herself the luxury of self-pity. There were bus routes to catch, customers to serve, and bills to pay. Her mother's medicine was already overdue, and the landlord had given her another warning just yesterday. She forced herself to sit up, rubbing the sleep from her eyes. She reached into the pocket of her apron, almost expecting her tip money to still be there, even though she knew she had given it away. When her fingers met only worn-out fabric, she sighed, but it wasn't regret. The memory of the hungry boy's face pierced her heart again. His cheeks sunken, his clothes too thin for the cold. The way he trembled as if one strong gust would blow him away. She couldn't have walked past him. No matter how tight her own situation was, she couldn't ignore a child suffering alone in the street. She splashed water on her face from a plastic bucket, tied her fraying hair ribbon, and prepared for another exhausting shift. But as she stepped outside, a strange worry tugged at her. The boy hadn't spoken much, barely a whisper of thank you, but his expression haunted her. She wondered if he had found a safe place to sleep. Had he gone home? Did he even have a home? Zuri shook her head. Children got lost all the time in the city. He was probably warm and safe now. Still, the unease lingered, following her like a shadow as she walked toward the bus stop. Across town, in a sprawling mansion where the walls gleamed with imported marble, a very different kind of morning was unfolding. The household staff scrambled in all directions, their usual coordinated routine shattered by panic. Tumo, the 10-year-old son of billionaire tech magnate Babael Nidlavu, was missing. The boy had slipped away from his driver and gotten lost during a chaotic traffic diversion the previous evening. No one had seen him since. "How could you let this happen?" Babael's voice thundered through the mansion like a storm. His tall frame and sharp features radiated authority, but today his power was overshadowed by fear. He had built an empire with intelligence, strategy, and iron discipline, but all of that meant nothing if his only son was wandering the dangerous streets alone. The chauffeur stammered apologies, trembling under Babael's glare. "Sir, I searched everywhere. He was right behind me, and then what?" Babael snapped. "You decided a missing child wasn't your concern." Winter, the flawless and impeccably dressed assistant who managed many of the day-to-day operations of the household, stepped forward, pushing her sleek glasses higher on her nose. "Sir, I've already contacted the police, the private security team, and several local centers that might have seen him. But if I may say, children from wealthy families are often targeted. This city is full of opportunists." Her tone dripped with disdain. "Especially the poor. They see potential ransom money and—" "Enough!" Babael cut her off sharply, though she smirked like she had already planted the seed. Babael's chest tightened with dread. Tumo had always been gentle, curious, easily overwhelmed by crowds. He hated the security escorts, The press cameras, the constant attention. He wanted something simpler, something real. Babael never knew how to give him that. Caught between running an empire and raising a child alone after his wife passed away. Now he feared the worst. "Find him," he ordered. "Search every corner of the city. Spare no expense." "Yes, sir," Winter said with a crisp nod, though deep down she believed the boy had already fallen into the hands of people who would use him. Meanwhile, Zuri stepped off the bus and entered the diner where she worked. The bright neon lights buzzed above her, flickering slightly. The floor smelled of bleach and old grease, and the manager already stood behind the counter with his arms crossed. "You're late," he barked. "It's only 5 minutes," Zuri answered calmly, slipping into her apron. "In this business, 5 minutes is the difference between keeping your job and losing it," he snapped. "Move faster today. We have a big order coming in." She lowered her head and hurried to her station. The diner filled quickly, wealthy office workers, construction crews, students rushing to class. Some were kind, most weren't. Being a waitress meant swallowing insults as often as serving meals. As she filled coffee cups, she found herself glancing outside every few minutes, searching for a thin silhouette, a boy with hollow eyes and trembling hands. But the streets were crowded. Anyone could disappear into them. A group of sharply dressed businesswomen sat at table 7, whispering loudly enough for Zuri to hear. "Look at her uniform," one scoffed. "Wrinkled, cheap. Honestly, they should hire staff who at least look presentable. She probably doesn't even own a mirror." Another laughed. Zuri felt heat rise in her cheeks, but forced a polite smile as she set their plates down. She needed the job. Pride wouldn't feed her mother. By noon, the exhaustion weighed on her ribs like stones. She stepped outside to take a breath and froze. Standing near the side wall of the restaurant was the same boy. He looked even thinner than last night, his small hands gripping his arms for warmth. His lips were pale, his hair messy, his clothes dirtier than she remembered. It was as if he had wandered the city all night. "Tumo," she whispered, though she didn't yet know his name. He lifted his head slowly, recognition and desperate relief flooding his eyes. He didn't speak, he simply nodded and took one hesitant step toward her. "Oh no." Zuri's heart twisted painfully. "What happened to you? Where is your family?" The boy shook his head, tears gathering at the corners of his eyes. "Come here," she said softly, kneeling and opening her arms. He ran into her embrace, and she felt how cold he was through his torn shirt. She held him tighter. "You shouldn't be out here alone. Come inside. I'll get you something warm." But as she led him toward the back door, she realized something devastating. She had no money left, not even enough for a small bowl of soup. The boy didn't seem to mind. He stayed close to her, trusting her without question. That trust broke her heart even more. "I'll figure something out," she whispered. She couldn't leave him. She couldn't turn him away, not after he had sought her out. "Come with me," she said finally. "My place isn't much, but you'll be safe." They walked toward her bus stop together, Tumo clutching her sleeve tightly. Back at the mansion, alarms rang out. A security guard rushed in. "Sir," a witness reported seeing a boy matching Tumo's description heading toward the South District an hour ago. "The South District," Winter repeated, horrified. "That area is full of tenement buildings and day laborers, poor people everywhere." Babael's jaw hardened. "Send more units." But Summer, the other assistant, whispered under her breath, "If he's with someone poor, they won't return him. Not without a reward." Winter nodded smugly. "Exactly my point earlier." Babael didn't respond, but a seed of fear rooted in his heart. He would do anything to find his son. Meanwhile, Zuri and the hungry boy who trusted her more than anyone walked toward the very world Babael believed too dangerous to understand. The morning sun climbed slowly over the horizon, casting a pale gold glow across the sprawling estate of the Nudlovu family, an empire built through decades of ruthless ambition, innovation, and discipline. But today, the house felt like a fortress under siege. Tension vibrated through the halls, carried by frantic footsteps and hushed, terrified whispers. Every marble column, every chandelier, every polished surface seemed to echo a single truth: the heir to the Ndlovu legacy was missing. Inside his private study, Babael Ndlovu stood rigid as stone, shirt cuffs rolled up, his stern face shadowed with exhaustion. He had not slept. The night had been a blur of phone calls, surveillance footage reviews, and barking orders into multiple lines at once. He was a man used to controlling every variable: markets, negotiations, the direction of the tech world, but he could not control this. His son, Tumo, fragile and sensitive, had slipped through the cracks. He clenched the bridge of his nose and exhaled. His sister, Naledi, stood nearby, wringing her hands. "Babael, please sit," she whispered. "I don't have time to sit," he replied sharply, though the exhaustion in his voice softened the edge. "My son is somewhere in this city, alone. I should have been with him more often. I should have—" "Stop!" Naledi touched his arm. "You are doing everything you can. But is it enough?" he muttered, staring into the distance. "Is it ever enough?" Before she could answer, Winter swept into the room, her heels tapping confidently against the polished floor. She carried a tablet filled with reports, updates, and digital maps marked with red dots. "Sir," she said crisply, "we've expanded the search perimeter, another 3 kilometers. We're coordinating with both police and private units. We've also notified high-profile areas, shelters, and private clinics." She paused, then added in a careful tone, "But we discovered something concerning." Babael stiffened. "What?" "A witness stated they saw a young boy matching Tumo's description last night, being approached by a woman." Naledi gasped softly. "Who is she?" Babael demanded, stepping forward. Winter shrugged with manufactured sympathy. "A waitress, poor. Lives in the slum district on the south side. Sir, it's highly likely she took him in. People in those areas are desperate. A lost billionaire's child is an opportunity." Babael's eyes darkened with fury. "So someone is holding him. We don't know yet," Winter said, though her meaning was clear. "But that area, well, you know the type of people who live there." He did know, or so he believed. A lifetime of privilege had given him a very narrow picture of poverty, danger, desperation, crime. His instincts told him not to trust strangers, especially in a city where wealth created predators as easily as it created envy. "Send the search team there now," he ordered. Winter bowed her head. "Already done, sir." As she walked out, Naledi turned to him. "Babael, wait. We don't know anything for sure. Tumo could have simply collapsed somewhere, or asked someone for help. My son shouldn't have to beg for help," he snapped. "He should have been safe." Tears welled in Naledi's eyes as she whispered, "You're not angry at that woman. You're angry at yourself." He didn't respond. He simply stared at the window across the city where, unbeknownst to him, the woman he feared was nothing like what he imagined, and the boy he loved was no prisoner. He was held by kindness. Meanwhile, miles away in a cramped, peace-starved neighborhood of narrow walkways and stacked apartment blocks, Zuri guided the small boy toward her building. The streets smelled of fried dough, old smoke, and the dampness of late morning air. Motorbikes zipped past. Children played barefoot beside rusted fences. A woman balanced a stack of laundry baskets on her head with graceful precision. Tumo walked silently, clutching Zuri's hand so tightly she worried he might hurt himself. She studied him as they climbed the broken concrete stairs of her building. His clothes were expensive, though wrinkled and dirty. His shoes were high quality, though scraped. His posture, even slumped with exhaustion, suggested he had once stood straight with confidence. She sensed there was a story he wasn't telling her. "It's not much," she whispered as she unlocked the metal door to her small room, "but you'll be safe here." Inside, the space was cramped but warm. A narrow bed, a tiny stove, a stack of books she had collected from flea markets, and a single window with a crooked curtain. Tumo looked around, with wide eyes, not judgmental, just surprised. He had never seen a home like this. A home where every item looked loved from use. "You can sit," she said gently. He sat, still shivering slightly. "Are you hungry?" she asked. He nodded. Zuri opened her cabinet, praying she had at least something left. She found half a loaf of bread, 2 eggs, and a nearly empty jar of peanut butter. "It's not fancy," she murmured. "But I promise you'll feel better after eating." She toasted the bread on the pan while humming softly, a habit she used to calm her anxious thoughts. As she worked, Tumo watched her with quiet fascination. Everything about her, the gentleness in her voice, the careful movements, the way she treated him as if he mattered, felt foreign but safe. When she handed him the plate, his eyes glistened. He ate slowly at first, then faster as hunger overtook him. "Easy," she whispered. "You're safe. No one will take it from you." The boy stopped eating and looked up at her, his lip trembling. Zuri froze. She recognized that expression. Loneliness, abandonment, fear. She sat beside him. "It's okay. You're not alone." He leaned into her side. She wrapped an arm around him and felt something inside her shift instinct, or connection, or something deeper she didn't yet understand. After he finished eating, she asked again, "Where is your family? Do they know you're missing?" He hesitated, then shook his head. "Do you know their phone number?" Another shake. Zuri sighed softly. "All right. We'll figure this out together. But first, we need to keep you warm." She gave him her only spare sweater. It hung big on him, but he smiled shyly. Across the city, search teams moved through streets, questioning shopkeepers, security guards, pedestrians. A driver showed pictures to everyone he passed. "Have you seen this boy? He's missing?" Many shook their heads. Some thought they might have seen someone similar. No one gave a clear lead. Winter, sitting in the back of a security SUV, made notes as calls came in. "No sightings yet," one guard reported. "Expand the search," she instructed. Privately, she smirked. If the boy had indeed been taken by someone poor, it would confirm every belief she held. She wanted to be the one to bring the boy home, not for loyalty to Babael, but to strengthen her influence. Back in the apartment, Zuri helped Tumo lie down and rest. He clutched her hand until his breathing slowed and he drifted into exhausted sleep. For the first time since meeting him, he looked peaceful. Zuri brushed his hair aside and whispered, "Whoever your family is, they must be worried sick. We'll find them, I promise." She didn't know that at that exact moment, dozens of people were searching for him. She didn't know the man pacing a mansion floor with fear-darkened eyes was one of the most powerful figures in the country. She didn't know that everything she did today would change her life. And she certainly didn't know that the boy lying on her narrow bed was not just any child. He was the billionaire's heir. The late afternoon sun slanted across the diner windows, scattering warm light over the bustling room as Zuri hurried back from her break. Her heart still hung heavy with worry for Tumo, who she had reluctantly left in her small apartment with a neighbor keeping an eye on him. It hadn't felt right to leave him alone, not after seeing the fright and exhaustion etched so deeply into his small features. But missing a shift meant risking her job, and losing her job meant losing the means to support her mother's treatment. She could only hope the boy slept peacefully until she returned. The diner was unusually crowded, packed with office workers finishing a long day, couples grabbing a late lunch, and wealthy patrons who treated the place as a casual stop during errands. The contrast was striking. Some 8 meals that cost more than Zuri earned in a whole shift, while she had given away her last tip money the previous night, only to find the same boy starving again this morning. "Zuri!" the manager barked the second he spotted her, weaving through the narrow aisle. "Where have you been?" "Table 3's been waiting." "I'm so sorry," she murmured, tying her apron quickly. "Don't tell me excuses," he snapped. "Just move." She swallowed her frustration and grabbed her notepad, rushing to table 3. The customers were already irritated. 3 fashionably dressed women with immaculate nails and jewelry that glinted like miniature stars. Their obsessive glances scanned Zuri from head to toe. Finally, one of them said, crossing her arms, "Do you always take this long? We're paying customers, you know." another chimed in. Look at her. She's probably never worn anything that costs more than $10. Zuri forced a neutral expression. I'm very sorry for the delay. What can I get for you? They ordered, with exaggerated flair, making sure she felt their superiority with every word. She jotted their requests while keeping her voice steady. Even though their insults hit her like tiny shards of glass, she had dealt with worse. She had endured worse. But today, something in her felt heavier, maybe because worry for Tumo tugged at her thoughts in a constant, relentless pull. As she delivered their meals, one woman smirked and said deliberately loudly, I hate when poor people serve me. They always look like they're begging even when they're not. Another added, I bet she smells like that greasy uniform even when she's off work. The table erupted in laughter. Zuri lowered the tray, set the plates gently before them, and stepped back without reacting. She couldn't afford a confrontation. She couldn't afford anything except silence. She bit the inside of her cheek so hard it nearly bled. But then she remembered the way Tumo had looked at her like she mattered. Like her kindness meant something, and something inside her steadied. As the afternoon rushed into evening, the diner grew even busier. Waiters dashed across the floor. The kitchen bell rang repeatedly, and customers grew impatient with the slightest delay. Zuri found herself moving on sheer instinct, carrying plates, refilling drinks, wiping down tables, all the while glancing toward the door as though expecting Tumo to suddenly appear again. The memory of him standing outside the diner, trembling, haunted her. Near closing hours, the noise dipped slightly as the last wave of customers settled. Zuri wiped sweat from her forehead and took a deep breath. She could make it through the last hour. She always did. But life had a way of surprising her, sometimes in the gentlest ways, other times with a cruel edge. As she rounded the corner to check on table 7, a sudden movement caught her attention. There, standing just beyond the glass door, was Tumo. Her heart stopped. He looked worse than earlier, face pale, eyes wide with fear, his small body shivering under her oversized sweater. He held onto the doorframe as though it were the only thing keeping him upright. Oh my God, she whispered under her breath. She hurried to the door and pulled it open. Tumo, what are you doing here? You should be resting. He swayed slightly before stepping into her arms. It wasn't exhaustion alone. It was desperation. He clung to her as if she were the last safe place in a world that terrified him. Did something happen? She asked softly, running her hand over his cold forehead. Did someone scare you? He shook his head, not speaking, but the fear in his eyes told her something wasn't right. She glanced around quickly. Had someone followed him? Was he being chased? Was he running from something? Customers stared, some with surprise, others with confusion, and a few with the same judgment she had grown used to. Whose kid is that? Someone muttered. Why is he dressed like that? Is she babysitting now? She can't even take care of herself. Zuri ignored them. They were just noise. Tumo was all that mattered. You can't stay out here alone, she whispered to him. Come inside. Stay with me for a moment. But she realized in the same breath that she didn't have money to buy him food, not even a bowl of soup. Her stomach twisted. Hold on, she told him. I'll figure something out. But before she could move, a familiar voice boomed across the diner. Zuri, the manager's voice. She turned slowly. He was marching toward her, face red with anger. Why is there a child here? This isn't a daycare. He's lost, Zuri said quietly. He has no one with him right now. I just need a moment to. If you think I'm letting some random street kid into this restaurant, you've lost your mind, the manager snapped. Get him out. Now. Zuri felt humiliation wash over her, but worse, panic. She couldn't take him outside again, not when he looked like he might collapse. Please, she whispered. Just let him stay in the corner for a few minutes while I finish my shift. I'll work extra hours tomorrow. No, the manager said coldly. If he's still here in 30 seconds, you're fired. Tumo flinched at the harsh tone. Pressing his face into Zuri's side, the customers murmured again, some watching with judgment, others with curiosity. She wrapped her arm protectively around Tumo. He's just a child, she said firmly. He's scared. Please. I don't care. The manager spit. He doesn't belong here, Tumo whimpered softly. Zuri's heart cracked a little more. Then, with a sudden clarity, she unclipped her apron and placed it on the counter. What are you doing? The manager demanded. Zuri held Tumo closer and lifted her chin. If choosing compassion costs me this job, then so be it. Murmurs rippled through the diner. The fashionably dressed businesswomen from earlier stared, wide-eyed and speechless. You're making a mistake, the manager snarled. No, Zuri said softly. I'm choosing a child over money. That's never a mistake. People whispered. Some even nodded with quiet admiration. Holding Tumo's trembling hand, she walked out of the diner and into the cool evening air. The door swung shut behind them. Outside, the sky was dimming, the streetlights flickering awake. The city felt vast and dangerous again. But Tumo stayed close, gripping her hand tightly. Come on, she whispered. Let's go home. You're safe with me. But neither of them noticed the black SUV turning onto the street, slowing as it approached the diner, nor the figure inside studying the boy's silhouette with narrowing eyes. Their worlds were about to collide. The walk back to Zuri's apartment was longer than usual, not because the distance had changed, but because she kept glancing behind her every few steps, worried someone might recognize Tumo or, worse, try to take him. The boy clung to her hand so tightly his knuckles turned white. He was breathing unevenly, small puffs of air coming out in shaky bursts, as though he'd been running for hours before reaching her. You're okay, she murmured, squeezing his hand gently. I'm here. Nothing bad will happen while I'm with you. But even as she said the words, a flicker of doubt gnawed at her. The way he trembled wasn't simply cold or hunger. It was fear, raw, hollow fear. He wasn't just lost. Something else was wrong, something he didn't know how to say, and that terrified her even more. They reached her apartment building, a shabby block of concrete that leaned slightly to one side. As if exhausted by years of carrying the weight of poverty, the metal stair railing wobbled under her touch, and the hallway smelled faintly of mildew and boiling onions. Tumo wrinkled his nose, but didn't complain. He followed her quietly until they reached her door. Her neighbor, Mrs. Penda, popped her head out of her room the moment she heard footsteps. You're back. Goodness, I was starting to worry, the elderly woman whispered. Her eyes fell on Tumo. Oh dear, is he all right? I'm not sure, Zuri admitted. He showed up at the diner. I think he's been wandering the city alone. Mrs. Penda's gaze softened with maternal concern. Poor thing. Let me know if you need anything. I will. Thank you, Zuri said, unlocking the door. Inside, the dim apartment felt warmer than before. Tumo stepped in hesitantly, looking around like he wasn't sure he deserved to be there. Zuri gently guided him to sit on the bed. Do you feel sick? She asked. He nodded weakly. Where does it hurt? He placed a hand on his forehead, then on his chest. Zuri pressed the back of her hand to his forehead. It was burning. Oh no, she murmured. You're running a fever. Her mind raced. She didn't have money for medicine. Not after giving away her tip money. Not after losing her job. She had a tiny bit saved for her mother's medication, but even that wasn't enough. The thought of using it made her stomach twist painfully, but how could she let a child suffer in front of her? I'll figure something out, she whispered again, more to herself than to him. Tumo's breathing grew heavier, and he curled sideways, hugging his knees. The image hit her with a force she wasn't prepared for. No child should ever have to feel this alone. She sat beside him, smoothing his hair. Do you know your parents' names? She asked softly. He hesitated, then whispered so faintly she had to lean in to hear, Ba. His voice cracked, and he stopped. She didn't push him. He was scared enough. Try to rest, she said gently. I'll be right back. She stepped into the hallway, leaning against the peeling wall as panic bubbled in her chest. She needed medicine. She needed money. And she had neither. Mrs. Penda peeked out again. How bad is it? He has a fever, Zuri said. I need paracetamol and something warm for him to drink. Mrs. Penda bit her lip. Zuri, dear, you know I'd help if I could. My pension was delayed again. It's okay, Zuri said, forcing a smile she didn't feel. I'll find a way. She walked down the stairs slowly. She didn't want to ask her landlord for an advance he would refuse. And humiliation was one thing she couldn't handle tonight. The street was busy, vendors closing for the night, mothers calling out to their children, men arguing over football. She approached a small neighborhood pharmacy. Please, she said, voice trembling. Can I buy the cheapest fever medicine? I have only this. She emptied her pockets onto the counter, 3 coins, worn and dull. The pharmacist frowned. This is not enough. Please, she whispered. There's a child who needs it. He shook his head. Her throat tightened. She gathered the coins back with shaking hands. A woman behind her spoke up. I'll cover the difference. Zuri turned, shocked. The woman gave her a small, warm smile. Children shouldn't suffer, the stranger said simply. Tears pricked Zuri's eyes. Thank you. Thank you so much. Medicine in hand. She sprinted back home as fast as her aching legs could carry her. When she entered her room, she found Tumo curled on the bed. Shivering despite the blanket, she knelt beside him. Here, sweetheart, take this. It will help. He swallowed the medicine obediently, then leaned against her shoulder. She wrapped her arms around him, feeling the fire of his fever through his skin. You're safe, she whispered. I've got you. He closed his eyes, breathing a little steadier now. But while Zuri fought to keep the small boy safe, across the city, a storm was brewing. The search teams had expanded their patrols into poorer districts, and security officers questioned locals aggressively. Rumors began to spread, some helpful, others twisted. Winter, watching the monitors inside a black SUV, tapped her pen thoughtfully. Someone saw a boy near the south housing blocks. A guard reported. Winter's eyes narrowed. Send units. If that woman has him, she won't keep him long. Back in the mansion, Babal stood in front of a massive wall-sized map with red pins marking every searched area. A security chief approached. Sir, we found a witness who claims they saw a young waitress walking with a boy matching your son's description this morning. Babal's jaw clenched. A waitress? Yes, sir. She seemed to be taking him somewhere. Taking him, he repeated sharply. Not helping. Taking. We don't know for sure. I don't care, Babal thundered. Find her. Bring my son home. His voice echoed, filled with desperation and a steel-hard determination that shook the room. Ending the meeting abruptly, he walked toward his office, gripping his son's abandoned backpack. Inside, it was a drawing, Tumo and him holding hands. The crooked little hearts drawn around it made something inside his chest crack. Where are you, my boy? He whispered. Meanwhile, Tumo stirred on Zuri's bed, his small fingers tightening around her wrist as though afraid she might disappear. His fevered voice broke into a soft plea. Don't leave me. She brushed his cheek gently. I'm not going anywhere. But she had no idea that, at that very moment, entire fleets of security vehicles were converging toward her neighborhood. Her kindness had saved a boy, but now it was about to turn her life upside down. Night descended over the city like a heavy curtain, dimming the last traces of daylight and pulling shadows long and trembling across the concrete streets. In Zuri's small apartment, one dim bulb buzzed above her, flickering every few seconds as if unsure whether it should stay alive. She sat at the edge of the bed, watching over Tumo as he drifted in and out of feverish sleep. His small body was curled tightly, his breath raspy, his fingers clutching the blanket she had wrapped around him. You're going to feel better soon, she whispered, brushing hair from his damp forehead. Just rest. I'm right here. For a moment, the world felt still fragile, but peaceful. The kind of peace Zuri rarely found in her own life. Then, faint at first, a distant rumble echoed from the street outside. Engines. Multiple engines. Growing louder, Zuri's head snapped up. Her neighborhood, far from wealthy or important, was not the kind of place that attracted convoys of expensive vehicles. She stood, walked toward the small window, and gently pulled back the curtain. Her breath caught. 4 black SUVs were rolling down her street, slow and deliberate, their headlights slicing through the dark like blades. People stepped aside, staring with unease. Some mothers pulled their children closer. Others simply froze. This wasn't police. This was something else. Something powerful. Her heart hammered. Somehow, she knew deep in her bones that this had something to do with Tumo. She rushed back to the bed. "Tumo," she whispered, shaking him lightly. "Wake up, I think. I think someone's looking for you." The boy's eyes fluttered open, heavy with fever, confusion clouding his gaze. "Are they bad people?" he whispered, voice trembling. "I don't know," she said honestly, "but we need to be ready." But they weren't ready, because before she could even think of a plan, a thunderous pounding shook her door. "Open up!" a voice roared. "Security! Open immediately!" Zuri jolted backward, her hand flying to her mouth. Tumo sat upright, his small body quivering. The pounding came again, fiercer, louder. "This is private security of the Nidlovu estate," the voice barked. "We know the boy is inside." Nidlovu. The name struck Zuri like lightning. She didn't know it personally, but everyone in the city knew of the Ndlovu family, powerful, wealthy beyond imagination, owners of a sprawling technological empire, and feared they could bury people with a whisper. She pressed Tumo's trembling shoulders gently. "It's okay," she whispered. "I'm here." But her voice was shaking too. She opened the door slowly, hands raised. The hallway flooded instantly with men in dark uniforms, their boots stomping in like an army. They pushed past her before she could speak. "Where is he?" one demanded. Zuri gasped as 2 of them brushed her aside, nearly knocking her into the wall. "He's sick," she tried to say. "He had nowhere to go." "Move," a guard snapped. "We'll take it from here," Tumo cried out when they approached him. "No, no, please leave her alone." His voice was ragged, panicked. A guard reached for him, but Tumo shrank away. Clinging to Zuri's waist, burying his face into her shirt, she knelt immediately, wrapping her arms protectively around him. "He's scared," she pleaded. "Don't touch him like that." A man stepped forward, older, heavy-set, with a sharp jaw and narrow eyes. The lead officer. "This woman is interfering with a retrieval operation," he said coldly. "Remove her." 2 guards grabbed Zuri by the arms. "Stop," she cried, struggling. "I didn't do anything wrong. I took care of him." Her voice cracked with desperation. Tumo screamed, "Don't take her." The sound of his fear pierced even the hardened guards for a moment. But only a moment. "We have our orders," the lead officer said. "The boy comes with us." One guard scooped Tumo into his arms despite the boy's flailing limbs and terrified sobs. "No, no, put me down. I want to stay with her," he cried, reaching desperately toward Zuri. Zuri's heart shattered. "Please," she screamed. "He's sick." "Let me come with him. He needs someone gentle, someone he trusts." The lead officer shot her a cold glare. "You have done enough. If the child is sick, our medics will handle it. Not a waitress from the slums." The words stung like a slap. Zuri's voice cracked. "I didn't take him. I found him. I fed him. I comforted him. We know what you did," the officer interrupted harshly. "You kept him. People do worse for ransom." Her entire body went numb. "Ransom? I never," she began. But before she could utter another word, she was shoved back into her tiny room, stumbling as the door slammed behind the security team, locking her out of the boy's reach. Tumo's cries echoed down the hallway. "Zuri! Zuyuyu!" She grabbed the doorknob, pulling, twisting, pounding, but it wouldn't open. Tears streamed down her cheeks as helplessness flooded her chest like ice. "Please," she yelled. "Please, just let me talk to him." But the guards were already marching away. Tumo's screams fading into the distance. Her knees buckled, and she sank to the floor, sobbing into her hands. It felt like someone had reached inside her chest and crushed her heart with their bare hands. Minutes passed before she could gather her breath enough to stand. She stumbled to the window, watching as the black SUVs pulled away. The last thing she saw was a small face pressed to the glass, tears streaking his feverish cheeks, hand reaching outward as if begging for anyone to save him. Then he was gone. The street fell silent. Zuri rested her forehead against the cold window pane, breathing in shaky, trembling gasps. "What have I done?" she whispered, but the truth twisted painfully inside her. She had done nothing wrong. She had only been kind. And now, people who didn't know her, didn't care about her, had taken the boy from her arms like she was a criminal. Across the city, in the darkest corridor of the Ndlovu mansion, the SUV convoy arrived. Staff swarmed around the boy like anxious bees. But Tumo shoved everyone away, screaming at the top of his lungs, "I want Zuri! Let me go back!" Servants froze. Guards exchanged glances. Someone rushed to inform Babail, but the damage had begun. A divide had formed. The boy who had everything wanted the one person who had nothing. And Zuri, now alone in her apartment, didn't yet know that her nightmare was only beginning. The Ndlovu mansion, already tense from a day of frantic searching, erupted into chaos the moment the convoy returned. Staff scrambled across the polished floor, whispers rippling like wildfire. "They found him. The heir is back. The boy is safe." But the truth was far more complicated. Because the boy was not calm, nor grateful, nor relieved. He was screaming. The guards practically carried him through the grand foyer as he bucked and twisted in their arms. Fever still burning through his skin, Tumo's voice ricocheted off marble walls, desperate and cracking. "Put me down. I want Zuri. Let me go back. I want her. Winter, who had been waiting near the staircase for the triumphant return, felt her smug smile falter at the sight. She stepped forward, forcing her expression into one of concern. "Tumo, sweetheart," she cooed with artificial sweetness. "You're home now. These people were just trying to protect you. I don't want you," he shrieked, kicking at a guard's shin. "Let me go." His voice cut through the mansion with a sharpness that silenced every servant within earshot. The head of security, sweating from the ordeal, quickly gestured to the guards. "Take him upstairs. Get the doctor. The fever's getting worse." The men nodded and rushed up the sweeping staircase, Tumo clawing at the air, hands reaching for someone who wasn't there, someone who had held him gently, whispered softly, treated him not as the heir to a billion-dollar business, but as a frightened child. He reached for Zuri, again and again. But she was nowhere near him. Winter cleared her throat shrilly and turned toward the entrance, smoothing her dress as she prepared for the next act in this chaotic drama. Because Babail Ndlovu strode into the foyer at that moment, towering, intimidating, his presence crackling like lightning across a dark sky. "Where is my son?" he demanded, voice low and dangerous. "Upstairs, sir," the head guard answered. But Babail didn't wait. He took the steps 2 at a time, his shoes hitting the marble with the force of thunder. Winter hurried behind him. They reached Tumo's room just as the doctor was attempting to take the boy's temperature. But the child jerked away, sobbing uncontrollably. "No, I want Zuri. I want to go back to her." Babail stopped in the doorway. For a moment, just a moment, his hardened expression cracked. His son was rarely like this. Tumo was quiet, gentle, sensitive, never demanding, never defiant, never wild with grief. "What happened to him?" Babail whispered. The doctor glanced at him nervously. "Sir, he's exhausted, dehydrated, feverish, and extremely distressed. He needs rest, warmth, and—" "Zuri," Tumo wailed again, voice breaking like glass. "I want her. She didn't yell. She didn't hurt me. She stayed with me. She helped me." Every word stabbed into Babail's chest like a blade. He exchanged a glance with Winter, who quickly stepped forward. "Sir, the boy is confused. He's been out in the streets all night. And you heard him. This waitress kept him. She might have manipulated him." "She didn't," Tumo cried from the bed. "She saved me. You don't know anything." Winter blinked, her cheeks flushing with annoyance. Babail exhaled slowly, reaching out to his son. "Tumo, it's all right. You're home. You're safe. These people, he gestured toward the doctor and guards, are here to help you. Tumo slapped his father's hand away. No, not them. I want Zuri. The rejection stunned everyone in the room. Even the doctor froze. Babael's throat tightened. Why her? Who is she to you? Tumo pointed at the guard who had grabbed him. They scared me. They took me away from her. She helped me when I had nothing. The head guard winced. Tumo, Winter interjected, voice brittle. She kidnapped. She didn't kidnap me, he shouted. She gave me food. She gave me her bed. She used her money to buy me medicine. Silence fell. Winter's lips parted in disbelief. Medicine. For God's sake, Babael growled, rounding on the guards. Why wasn't this reported to me? The head guard stammered. Sir, we were under the impression that she was hiding him, not helping. Did you verify anything before tearing him away from her? Babael's voice rose like a storm. Did you even speak to her? The guard swallowed. We acted based on the directive of your assistant. Sir. Winter stiffened. All heads turned slowly toward her. I was protecting the family. She sputtered, masking panic with righteousness. Poor people do things out of desperation. We couldn't risk. A sharp gesture from Babael silenced her. His jaw was clenched so tightly the tendons stood out along his neck. Get out, he said coldly. Sir, everyone except the doctor. Out. Winter opened her mouth to argue, but the look in his eyes froze her where she stood. She turned and left the room, her heels clicking sharply, each step brimming with resentment. The guards scrambled out, and soon only the doctor remained quiet, tense. Tumo's sobbing had softened into whimpers. His small body curled toward the side of the bed. Babael walked over slowly and sat beside him, suddenly appearing older, more vulnerable than he had all night. Tumo, he whispered. Son, look at me. The boy didn't. He wiped his tears with the blanket. Did she really help you? Babael asked softly. Tumo sniffed hard. Yes. Did she hurt you? Scare you? No. She was kind. His voice cracked. She held my hand. She let me sleep on her bed. She didn't yell. She wasn't angry. She cared. A lump rose in Babael's throat. His son had needed compassion. Not power. Not soldiers. Not Winter's paranoia. Just human kindness. She gave me all her money, Tumo whispered. She gave me food even though she didn't have enough, and then she bought me medicine. She didn't have to, but she did. Babael closed his eyes. This waitress, this woman he had assumed was a threat, had done what he, with all his wealth and influence, had failed to do, protect his child. After a long silence, he spoke again, voice thick. Tumo, I promise you, I'll find her, and I'll make things right. The doctor stepped forward. Sir, he needs rest. Fever's dropping. Let him sleep. Babael nodded and stood, brushing a hand through his son's hair before forcing himself to leave the room. But before he stepped out, Tumo whispered, Daddy, don't be angry at her. Babael froze. He turned, his expression softening in a way none of his staff had ever witnessed. I'm not, he said quietly. Not anymore. When he closed the door behind him, he found Winter waiting downstairs, rigid and tense. Well, she asked. Did he calm down? Babael fixed her with a stare so cold. Winter instinctively stepped back. We misjudged her, he said. Winter blinked. Sir, enough. He cut her off. She helped my son, and we dragged her like a criminal. Winter's facade cracked. Sir, that girl is nobody. A poor waitress in a slum. You can't be serious. Babael's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. We owe her an apology, and I intend to deliver it personally. Winter felt something twist inside her anger. Jealousy, fear. A poor waitress had managed to do what she never could, earn his admiration, and perhaps something more. Babael turned away. Signaling the conversation was over, Winter watched him walk upstairs, fists clenched, eyes burning. She whispered under her breath, This girl, this nobody, she's going to regret ever touching this family. But the truth was clear. Zuri hadn't touched the Endlovu family. She had shaken it to its core. The next morning dawned with a gray heaviness that seemed to match the mood inside the Nidlovu mansion. Storm clouds gathered over the estate, casting long shadows across the manicured gardens and polished stone courtyards. Inside, the air was thick with unspoken tension. Servants whispered in corners, guards shifted nervously, and no one dared to speak too loudly. The previous night's events had left the house rattled Tumo's raw screams, the chaos of his return, the accusations thrown like daggers. But no one felt the weight more than Zuri. Across the city, Zuri sat on the edge of her narrow bed, her body exhausted from a sleepless night. Her hands still trembled from the shock of last night's raid. The memory played on a loop in her mind, the pounding fists on her door, the invasion of strangers, Tumo being ripped from her arms as he screamed her name. Every time she closed her eyes, she heard his voice echoing through the hallway. "Zuri, don't let them take me." It had taken hours for her tears to stop. And even now, her chest ached as if a piece of her heart had been torn away. She didn't know where he was. She didn't know how he was. She didn't even know if he was safe. The fever, his trembling hands, his exhaustion, her stomach twisted with fear at the thought of him needing comfort and finding none. The pounding on her door startled her so violently she nearly fell off the bed. She froze. Not again, not like last night, but the knock was softer this time, calmer, deliberate. She approached the door slowly, every muscle tense. "Who is it?" she asked quietly. "It's Mrs. Penda, darling. Open up." Relief washed over her. She unlocked the door, letting her elderly neighbor inside. "Oh, Zuri," Mrs. Penda whispered, taking one look at her. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "Something like that," Zuri muttered, voice shaky. Mrs. Penda sat beside her, placing a comforting hand over hers. "I heard all the commotion last night. Those men, they treated you like a criminal. Are you all right?" Zuri shook her head, fresh tears spilling. "They took him. They didn't even let me explain. He was the billionaire's boy, wasn't he?" Zuri blinked. "You know who he is?" Mrs. Penda nodded gravely. "The news has been buzzing since dawn. They found the missing heir. Some are saying a poor woman took him. Others are saying she cared for him." Zuri buried her face in her hands. "I didn't take him. He found me. I just helped him. But they wouldn't listen." "They will," Mrs. Penda said gently. "Truth has a way of coming out." But Zuri wasn't so sure. Miles away, in the Nidlovu mansion, the truth was already stirring. Tumo lay curled under a thick duvet, the fever finally breaking. His small face was still pale, but his breathing was easier. The doctor nodded in satisfaction. "He will recover fully," he said to Babael. "He just needs rest, hydration, and calm." "Calm," Babael repeated bitterly. "My son hasn't been calm since he was taken from that woman." The doctor hesitated. "Sir, if I may, children do not form bonds like that without reason. He must have felt safe with her." Babael dismissed him with a nod, though the words sank deep. Safe. His son had felt safe with a stranger, a poor waitress, in a slum apartment, and not with him. The guilt gnawed at his ribs. After the doctor left, Babael stood by Tumo's bedside, watching the boy sleep. His small hand clutched the sleeve of Zuri's oversized sweater, the one she had given him to keep warm. He pulled it closer even in his sleep. "I will fix this," Babael whispered. He meant it. But someone else had very different plans. Downstairs, in a private sitting room, Winter paced furiously. Her heels dug sharply into the carpet, leaving angry impressions in their wake. "He's losing his mind," she muttered. "Apologize to a waitress. Invite her here. What madness is this?" Her phone buzzed. A security guard had sent her a report about Zuri's background. She opened it eagerly. Zuri Mbeki, age 24, waitress, lives in South District, mother ill, income below poverty line, no criminal record. Winter scoffed. "Of course not. Criminals get more attention." But the next part stung more than she expected. Character references. Known as hard-working, honest, generous. helps neighbors. Described by locals as kind-hearted, Winter's lip curled, kind-hearted, pathetic. She tossed the tablet aside and sank into a chair, seething. She had spent years earning Babael's trust, handling his schedules, managing his estate, overseeing his staff. She had been indispensable, necessary, valuable. And then, one impoverished waitress offered a child a piece of bread, and suddenly, she was the saint, the savior, the symbol of everything Winter was not. "I won't let her ruin this," Winter hissed. "I won't let her take what I've built." At that moment, footsteps echoed outside the door. Winter straightened as Babael entered the room. His expression was cold, controlled, hardened. "Winter," he said quietly. "Sir," she replied, forcing a smile. "I was just organizing we need to talk." Her stomach dropped at the tone. "I misjudged her," he said. "And Tumo is suffering because of it. This woman helped him, comforted him, protected him, and we dragged her from her home like she was a criminal." Winter swallowed hard. "Sir, you can't possibly be blaming yourself. She is." "I am blaming myself," he said sharply. The silence was so thick it was suffocating. Winter lowered her gaze, masking her anger. "What do you plan to do?" "I intend to speak with her, to make amends. Personally." Winter's jaw tightened. "Sir, going into that district is dangerous. You have enemies, the press. I don't care," he snapped. "She saved my son." Winter bit down on her tongue hard enough to taste blood. Saved. He had never used that word when addressing her efforts. "Prepare the car," Babael ordered. "We leave within the hour." Winter nodded stiffly. "As you wish." But as soon as he walked out, her eyes narrowed with venom. No one threatened her place beside the Ndlovu family. No waitress, no slum girl, no nobody. She picked up her phone and dialed quickly. "I need information," she whispered. "Everything you can find about that girl, and her weaknesses." Meanwhile, oblivious to the storm looming above her, Zuri walked toward the small window of her apartment, watching the gray clouds gather. She didn't know her life was about to change again. This time, not from poverty, but from the arrival of a billionaire at her doorstep. The clouds outside Zuri's window thickened, pressing low over the city as if they carried the weight of the turmoil brewing inside her chest. She stood with her arms wrapped around herself, staring blankly at the crooked metal rooftops and narrow alleyways that made up her world, a world that had felt unbearably small, until a frightened boy with gentle eyes had stumbled into it, only to be torn away violently in the dark. Her mind replayed it again and again. The pounding on her door, the men storming in, the harsh accusatory stares, the cold hands grabbing her, and Tumo's desperate cries echoing down the hallway. "Zuri, Zuri, please, don't let them take me." Her breathing grew uneven. She pressed a trembling hand to her lips, trying to force back the ache in her throat. She had never felt so powerless. Not even when her mother was diagnosed, not even when she worked. Triple shifts without sleep. None of it compared to the helplessness of watching a child who trusted her be ripped away without reason. A soft knock sounded on her door. She tensed instantly, her heart jumping, muscles tightening, breath catching, but the knock was gentle. Too gentle to belong to the men who had taken Tumo. "Zuri," a familiar voice called. "It's just me." She exhaled shakily and opened the door. Mrs. Penda stood there, clutching a folded newspaper against her chest, her expression troubled. "I thought you should see this," she said quietly, handing the paper to Zuri. The headline was impossible to miss, bold black letters stretching across the front page. "Missing billionaire hire found. Taken in by slum woman." Below it, a grainy photograph of Tumo in the arms of one of the guards, looking terrified and feverish, appeared beside a blurred shot of Zuri being held back as she struggled toward him. Zuri's stomach dropped. She read the first paragraph. A waitress from the poorest district allegedly sheltered the missing heir, raising questions about her intentions. Authorities suspect possible ransom motives. Her hands shook with fury. "I never," She choked on the words. "I never tried to take him. I never wanted anything from him." "I know, Mrs. Penda said gently, placing a warm hand on her arm. "The people who matter will know too. Truth doesn't stay buried forever." Zuri blinked hard. "But the world believes lies so easily. That's why you must stay strong." The older woman squeezed her hand. "The boy knows the truth, and he will tell it." But Zuri wasn't convinced. Tumo was a child. A feverish, frightened child. And she had no idea what kind of pressure he might be under. In that enormous mansion with strangers pulling him in every direction. People like them, powerful, wealthy, ruthless shaped the narrative. However, it suited them. And she was just a girl in a cracked apartment in a forgotten district. Mrs. Penda hesitated. "There's something else." Zuri looked up. "I overheard the security men in the street this morning," she said. "They said the billionaire himself is furious. That he thinks you took his son. That he wants answers." Zuri's legs wobbled. She clutched the edge of her table to steady herself. "I didn't take him," she whispered. "I found him. I saved him." "I know," Mrs. Penda said softly. "But powerful men don't always care about the difference." Something icy slid down Zuri's spine. Mrs. Penda gave her shoulder one last squeeze before leaving. When the door closed, silence fell again. Heavy, crushing. Zuri folded onto the edge of her bed, burying her hands into her hair. Her life had been difficult before, but this was a nightmare she hadn't imagined in her worst fears. Across the city, however, the truth was already beginning to surface. The Nidlovu mansion hummed with activity, medical staff moving in and out of Tumo's room, security guards stationed at every entrance, and family members whispering updates along the hallways. In the center of it all, Tumo sat upright in bed, clutching the faded sweater that still smelled faintly of detergent and the soft lavender soap Zuri used. His fever had broken, but his tears had not. "Daddy," he croaked when Babael entered the room. Babael paused. He wasn't prepared for the boy's fragile voice or the hollow sadness in his eyes. He approached carefully, sitting beside him. "How are you feeling, my son?" "I want her," Tumo whispered. Babael's jaw tightened. "I know. She was good to me," the boy whispered. She didn't treat me like I was a problem. She held me when I was scared. She gave me food. She gave me her bed. She bought me medicine with her own money." A fissure of shame cracked through Babael. "I believe you," he said. Tumo looked up, eyes watery. "Do you think she's okay?" The question struck Babael deeply. "Yes," he said slowly. "I will make sure she is." A soft knock interrupted them. A guard entered, saluting respectfully. "Sir, there's something you need to see." He handed Babael a tablet. Babael clicked play. It was the footage from a street security camera, and there, caught in shaky but unmistakable clarity, was Zuri kneeling in the rain, giving her tip money to a shivering Tumo. Not demanding, not threatening, just offering what little she had. A second clip showed her guiding him gently down the street, lifting him when his legs grew weak, holding his hand like a protective sister. A third clip, her returning from a pharmacy with medicine, rushing toward her apartment. Worry etched into her every step. Babael felt something settle painfully in his chest. "She saved him," the guard said quietly. "Without her, who knows what might have happened?" Babael nodded slowly. "Prepare the car." "Sir, I'm going to see her." The guard hesitated. "Sir, the press is already circling that district, and your assistant, Winter, has said enough." Babael cut in sharply. "Get the car." The guard bowed and left. But someone else had heard everything. Winter stood in the hallway, hidden just beyond the doorframe, her stomach twisted with fury. He believed the girl. He was going to her. And worse, Tumo adored her. It felt like betrayal. "No one threatens my place in this family," Winter thought, nails digging into her palms. Not a waitress, not a girl from the slums, not someone who had earned affection so effortlessly, something Winter had chased for years. Back in her apartment, Zuri stared at the newspaper again, anger and heartbreak swirling inside her. She didn't hear the quiet rustle outside her door. She didn't sense the eyes watching from the shadowed stairwell. She didn't know someone was already plotting to destroy her completely. She only knew one thing. She missed Tumo. Across the city, inside a black luxury car slicing through the streets, Babael clenched the tablet in one hand and whispered, "Zuri, forgive me." His car turned toward the slums, toward the woman who had changed everything, and toward the truth he needed to face. Rain began to fall as Babael's luxury sedan made its way toward the South District, drops tapping steadily against the windows in a rhythmic, almost mournful cadence. The chauffeur drove carefully through narrowing streets, passing from the glass and steel skyline into a world where sidewalks cracked, walls peeled, and small shops leaned as though weary from years of hardship. The deeper they ventured, the more it felt like another reality entirely. One Babael rarely acknowledged, one he certainly never stepped foot in. But tonight, he wasn't a billionaire. He wasn't a CEO. He wasn't a man with power. He was a father who had misjudged the one person who had shown his child true kindness. As the car rolled to a stop near Zuri's building, he stared out at the surroundings, his expression unreadable. Water pooled in potholes, flickering under the dim streetlights. A stray cat darted into an alley. Several neighbors lingered in doorways, watching the unfamiliar vehicle with suspicion. "Sir," the chauffeur said quietly, "should I stay close?" "No," Babael replied. "She has every reason to fear me already. I'll go alone." He stepped out into the rain, his expensive shoes splashing into muddy water. The cold drops soaked through his tailored coat, but he didn't flinch. He walked forward with determination, ignoring the curious stares from onlookers. Above him, on the 4th floor, a curtain shifted ever so slightly. Zuri saw him before he saw her, her breath caught, body stiffening as she recognized the figure even through the rain-blurred glass. The billionaire, the father, the man who had taken Tumo away. Her pulse hammered, fear surged through her. Why is he here? What does he want? Was he here to accuse her again, to threaten her, to punish her for simply helping a lost, frightened child? A soft, shaky breath escaped her as she backed away from the window, pressing herself against the wall. Down below, Babael stood at the crumbling entrance of her building. The metal door hung crookedly on one hinge, groaning as he pushed it open. The stairwell smelled of damp concrete and cooking spices. Children's laughter echoed faintly from a distant floor, mixing with the steady downpour outside. He climbed slowly. Each step seemed to echo the weight of guilt pounding in his chest. When he reached her door, he paused. His knuckles hovered above the wood. One breath, then another. Then, he knocked firm, but not forceful. Inside, Zuri flinched. Mrs. Penda, who had been keeping her company, shot her a worried look. "Do you want me to stay?" Zuri shook her head. "No. If it's who I think, I need to face him." Mrs. Penda squeezed her hand before slipping quietly into her own apartment. Zuri inhaled slowly, steadying herself, then opened the door. For a moment, neither spoke. He stood there, soaked, imposing, yet strangely human rain dripping from his hair and shoulders. His dark eyes searched her face, taking in every detail, the fear, the exhaustion, the mistrust carved deep into her expression. Finally, he bowed his head slightly. "I'm sorry." Zuri blinked. She hadn't expected that, least of all from a man whose slightest gesture commanded entire industries. "I wronged you," he said quietly. "Terribly." She swallowed hard but didn't step aside. "Your men broke into my home. They treated me like a criminal. They took him while he begged not to be taken." Pain flickered across his face. "Yes," he admitted, "and I allowed it, because I was blinded by fear for my son. I assumed the worst of you without ever hearing the truth, and I am ashamed of that." Her voice trembled. "I didn't take him. He found me. He was starving, sick, and alone. I just tried to help." "I know," he said softly. "I've seen the footage." She stiffened. "Footage," he nodded. Street cameras. They captured your first encounter with him. The way you gave him your tip money. The way you shielded him from the rain. The way you rushed to the pharmacy when he grew worse. Zuri felt her throat tighten. She hadn't known anyone was watching. She certainly hadn't helped him for recognition. He trusted you, Babael continued, more deeply than I have seen him trust anyone in years. Zuri's eyes glistened despite her attempts to maintain control. He was scared. He needed someone. And you were there, he said. When I wasn't. The confession surprised even him. A moment of stillness passed heavy, but warm in an unexpected way. May I come in? He asked gently. She hesitated. Every instinct urged her to protect herself. Yet another part of her, the part that still remembered Tumo's fevered head resting against her shoulder, knew she needed answers, needed closure. She stepped aside. He entered her apartment quietly, his gaze softening as he took in the small space, the single bed, the leaning bookshelf, the cracked walls. Humility weighed on him. This humble place had offered his son more comfort than his mansion had. He turned to her. Zuri, thank you. Her breath caught. No one had thanked her properly until now. For feeding him, he said. For sheltering him, and for showing him a gentleness that wealth could never buy. Zuri blinked back tears. Is he? Okay. He's recovering, Babael replied. The fever broke. He's tired, but he's safe. He paused, then added quietly. He cried for you. The words landed like a blow to her chest. He did. Yes. He kept repeating your name. He said you made him feel safe. She pressed a trembling hand over her heart. He wants to see you, Babael continued. And I want you to see him if you're willing. She hesitated again, overwhelmed by so many emotions. Fear, relief, longing, uncertainty. I don't know if I should, she whispered. Your staff already thinks I'm some kind of threat, your assistant. Winter will no longer interfere, Babael said sharply. Her decisions were misguided, and I allowed her too much influence. That will change, Zuri swallowed. You're a powerful man. Your world isn't like mine. Perhaps that is why my son was drawn to yours, he said, voice softer. Because he found something here that he couldn't find in my world. She looked away, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. He took a slow step forward, not commanding, not overwhelming, simply present. Zuri, I owe you more than an apology. I owe you my gratitude and my respect. She shook her head, overwhelmed. I didn't do anything extraordinary. I just helped a child. That, he said quietly, is extraordinary. Another knock sounded suddenly on her door. Both turned sharply. Zuri stiffened again. Are your guards? No, Babael said, frowning. I came alone. Zuri approached the door cautiously and opened it halfway. A young man from the building stood there, panting. Miss Zuri, the police are downstairs. They're asking questions about you. Her blood ran cold. Babael's expression hardened instantly. What kind of questions? They said. Someone reported you for endangering a child, Zuri gasped. I never. I know, Babael said firmly, stepping beside her. His presence suddenly protective. But someone is trying to frame you. Zuri's pulse raced. Who would? He already knew. Winter. He clenched his jaw. Zuri, you're not alone in this. I'll handle them. But, you saved my son, he said, voice low, steady. Now let me protect you. For the first time since the nightmare began, hope flickered in Zuri's chest. Outside, the storm raged on. Inside, a different storm was only beginning. The hallway outside Zuri's apartment filled with the distant echo of footsteps. Slow, deliberate, heavy. Voices murmured downstairs, too muffled to make out the words but sharp enough to slice through Zuri's nerves. Rainwater dripped from the hems of Babael's coat as he stepped closer to her, instinctively positioning himself between her and the open doorway like a shield. The transformation was startling. A man who hours ago had allowed his security team to tear her world apart now stood as her protector. Stay behind me, he said quietly. Zuri swallowed hard. I didn't do anything wrong. I know, he answered. And the police will know too once I speak. But Zuri wasn't naive. Power shaped truth, wealth shaped perception, and she had neither. The police downstairs might not be cruel, but they would listen first to whoever held more influence, and those loyal to the Ndlovu estate were many. A sudden, sharper voice cut through the stairwell. She's on the 4th floor. Check every door. Zuri felt her heart stop. That's them, she whispered. Babael's brow furrowed. This wasn't authorized by me. Winter must have contacted someone she shouldn't have. He stepped toward the staircase as the officers appeared, 2 uniformed policemen and a detective in a dark trench coat. They paused at the sight of him, visibly startled. Mr. Ndlovu, the detective said, straightening his posture. We weren't informed you were here. That's because you were not authorized to be here, Babael replied, his voice cold steel. Explain yourselves. The detective cleared his throat. Sir, we received an anonymous report claiming the woman in this apartment endangered your son. We're required to follow up. Anonymous, Babael repeated slowly. Convenient. Zuri stepped forward, her hands trembling. I took care of him. He was starving, feverish. I bought him medicine. The detective raised a hand, not cruelly, but formally. Ma'am, we aren't accusing you. We're investigating. But Zuri had heard those words before. From landlords, from employers, from people who claimed neutrality while punishing her anyway. She opened her mouth to speak again, but Babael cut in with surprising force. There will be no investigation. The officers stiffened. Sir, that's not. My son was not endangered, he continued. He was saved by this woman. If not for her, he might not be alive right now. The detective blinked. Sir, are you saying the report was false? I am saying, Babael growled, stepping forward, that anyone who dares to question her intentions will answer directly to me. For a moment, the only sound was rain lashing against the windows. Zuri stared at him, stunned. The detective nodded shakily. Understood, but we still need to file a statement confirming the situation is resolved. Then file it, Babael said. Write that this woman acted with compassion and humanity while the rest of us failed to see the truth. The words struck Zuri so deeply she had to grip the doorframe to stay upright. The officers exchanged looks, sensing their visit and their authority had ended. They nodded respectfully, murmured apologies, and retreated down the stairs. When their footsteps faded, silence returned. A silence heavy with unspoken emotion. Zuri closed the door slowly, turning to face the man who now stood in her small apartment with rain dripping from his sleeves and regret weighing visibly on his shoulders. For a long moment, they simply looked at each other. It was Babael who spoke first. Zuri, my son is alive because of you. That is the truth, and I will not allow anyone, police, staff, or Winter, to twist it into something else. Her throat tightened. Why did she do that to me? His eyes darkened. Because she's afraid. Afraid of losing the influence she has in my household. Afraid of losing her proximity to power. Winter sees compassion as weakness. She sees your kindness toward Tumo as a threat. Zuri lowered her gaze. I don't want to be a threat to anyone. I just cared about him. And he cared for you, he replied quietly, deeply, more than you realize. She felt heat rise to her cheeks, a softness spreading in her chest. But another emotion rose to fear. What happens now? She whispered. Your assistant is clearly not done. She might try again. I won't allow it, he said firmly. You have my word. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. You are under my protection now. The words made her tense, not because she doubted him, but because she understood what such a statement meant, in a world where the powerful rarely protected the helpless. But there was something in his tone. Sincerity, not dominance. Gratitude, not obligation. Before either of them could speak again, footsteps clattered up the stairs. Fast, urgent. Sir, a guard called breathlessly from the hallway. There's been an incident at the mansion. Babael turned sharply. What happened? It's Tumo, the guard panted. He woke up. He's asking for her. Demanding her. He refuses to calm down. Zuri's heart lurched painfully. Is he okay? He's fine physically, the guard said, but emotionally he's inconsolable. The guard turned to Babael. He insists he won't take his medicine unless she's there. Babael exhaled slowly, rubbing his forehead. The decision forming in his mind was clear even before he spoke. You should come with me, he told Zuri. She blinked. To your mansion. Yes, he replied. He needs you, and I need to make this right. Zuri hesitated, fear and uncertainty clouding her thoughts. Babael, your staff hates me, your assistant hates me, and I'm just a waitress. I don't belong in your world. He stepped closer, a respectful closeness, but grounding, steadying. You belong wherever kindness is needed, he said softly, and right now, my son needs you. Her breath trembled. Are you sure? Yes, he said. Come with me, please. It was the please that undone her resistance. A man who commanded empires asking her humbly to help him. She nodded, slowly at first, then with conviction. Okay, she whispered. I'll go. Relief washed across his face, real, unguarded relief, as if a weight had been lifted from him. He offered his hand, not as a billionaire offering charity, but as a father seeking help. As a human bridging worlds, Zuri hesitated only a second before taking it. His grip was firm, warm, steady. She followed him into the hallway, down the creaking stairs, past the neighbors who peeked from behind doors in awe, and toward the waiting car that glistened under the rain. As the door closed behind them, and the engine hummed to life, Zuri felt something shift, not just in her circumstances, but in the very axis of her life. The slums blurred into darkness outside the window. Ahead, the mansion awaited. So did Tumo, so did the truth. So did a storm far greater than rain, because winter had already learned of Zuri's invitation to the mansion, and she was preparing her next move. The drive to the Endlovu mansion felt unreal, too silent, too smooth, too foreign to the world Zuri knew. She sat stiffly in the back seat, fingers intertwined tightly in her lap, her pulse thrumming beneath her skin. Lightning flickered outside the tinted window, illuminating the city's divide. One moment, narrow roads and crowded stalls. The next, sweeping boulevards and glass towers shimmering like polished jewels under the storm. Babael sat beside her, not speaking, but stealing quiet glances at her when he thought she wasn't looking. He had never brought an outsider, much less someone from a district like hers, into his personal home before. Yet here he was, escorting her himself, and that alone would be enough to spark a frenzy among his staff. Zuri exhaled shakily. Does Tumo really want to see me? Babael turned to her, his expression softening. He cried your name until he lost his voice. You brought him comfort when no one else could. That matters more than you know. She looked down, a swirl of relief and ache blooming in her chest. I just didn't want him to feel alone. Then you gave him something money never has, he murmured. The car curved through the mansion gates, and Zuri's breath caught. The estate spread before her like something from a dream, high stone pillars, towering windows, manicured gardens glowing beneath soft ground lights. She felt her throat tighten with intimidation and disbelief. What am I doing here? As the car stopped at the entrance, a team of guards rushed forward, forming a protective perimeter. Several staff members gathered near the doorway, whispering among themselves, but when they saw who stepped out of the car after Babael, their eyes widened. A poor waitress, standing beside their billionaire employer. Her clothes were simple, her shoes worn, her hair slightly disheveled from the rain. She looked painfully out of place, a single raindrop against a moonlit lake. Murmurs rippled. Is that her? The woman from the slums. She's the one who took the boy. No, she saved him. Didn't you hear? Why would he bring her here? Zuri's cheeks burned as dozens of eyes pierced her. She wanted to shrink, to disappear. But Babael stepped closer, placing a steadying hand on her back, a silent reassurance. She's here as my guest, he said loudly. voice cutting through the whispers like a blade. "Show her respect." Silence fell instantly. The staff members straightened their posture. Some bowed their heads, others exchanged uneasy glances but said nothing. Baba El turned to her. "Come, he's waiting." As they walked through the massive foyer, Zuri couldn't keep from staring. The floor gleamed like polished ice. Chandeliers sparkled overhead, dripping crystals that looked too delicate to touch. Portraits lined the walls, ancestors dressed in regal attire, watching her with painted eyes. She felt smaller with every step. "Don't be afraid," Baba El said gently. "This house has known coldness for too long. It needs the warmth you gave my son." They reached Tumo's room on the second floor. A guard stepped aside, opening the door quietly. Inside, the small boy lay propped on pillows. A blanket pulled to his chin, his eyes were swollen from crying. His hair stuck to his forehead. He clutched the sleeve of the sweater she had given him. "Tumo," Baba El said softly. "Someone is here to see you." The boy turned slowly, then gasped. "Zuri," his voice cracked. But joy burst through it like sunlight breaking through clouds. Zuri's heart nearly collapsed. She stepped inside, her eyes filling with tears. "Hey, sweetheart," she whispered. He scrambled out of bed before anyone could stop him. Fever or no fever, he ran straight to her, crashing into her legs with such force she stumbled back slightly. She knelt, scooping him into her arms. He clung to her neck desperately, sobbing into her shoulder. "You came," he cried. I thought they wouldn't let you." Zuri stroked his hair, tears falling freely now. "I promised you. I'm here." Behind them, Baba El watched in stunned silence, his stern facade melting as he witnessed something he had never seen in his own house. His son, genuinely happy, genuinely safe, genuinely loved. The doctor nearby cleared his throat softly. He should rest, but I've never seen him this calm. Zuri pulled back slightly, examining Tumo's face. "Are you feeling better?" He nodded, wiping his nose. "Yes, but only because you're here." She smiled through her tears. "I'm glad." The moment was warm, beautiful, and it infuriated someone watching from the doorway. Winter. She stood stiffly, her manicured nails digging into her palms, eyes sharp with disbelief and fury. She had changed her outfit, but her expression was the same venomous glare she carried all morning. "So," she said with cold triumph, stepping into the room, "this is the woman who has captured the affection of both the child and the father." Zuri stiffened. Babal's expression hardened instantly. "Winter, now is not the time." "Oh, I think it is," Winter replied smoothly. "I think it's long overdue." She turned her icy gaze to Zuri. "You've caused quite a stir, Miss Mbeki. My employers have been running in circles, and now you stand here as if you belong in this home." Zuri didn't answer. She hugged Tumo a little tighter. Winter's lip curled. "Don't pretend you're innocent. Poor people always have motives. You hid him. You manipulated him. And now you're manipulating." "Enough," Baba El snapped, so sharply the air seemed to crack. Winter paused, startled. "You will not speak to her like that," he said, stepping between them. "She did what none of us did. She protected him. She endangered him," Winter hissed. "She saved him," Baba El corrected. Winter's eyes flicked to the doctor, to the guard, to Tumo seeking support. But no one met her gaze. "So that's it," she spat. "You believe her over us, over me, a stranger from the slums, a stranger who showed my son more love in 2 days than this house has in years," Baba El said quietly. Winter recoiled as if slapped. Zuri looked away. Overwhelmed, Tumo tugged her sleeve. "Don't cry," he whispered. "I'm here." She hugged him again. Winter seethed. "This is madness, sir. She doesn't belong. If you say one more word," Baba El cut in coldly, "you are dismissed." Winter froze. Disbelief washed over her features. "You wouldn't," she breathed. "I would," Baba El replied. "And I will." The room descended into stunned silence. Winter's face contorted with rage, pure. burning, poisonous rage. "You'll regret this," she whispered, barely audible. She stormed out, slamming the door so hard the chandelier trembled. A heavy stillness settled afterward. Zuri rose to her feet slowly, still holding Tumo's hand. "I didn't want to cause trouble," she murmured. "You didn't," Babail said. "Trouble was already here. You simply revealed it." She looked at him shyly, uncertainty flickering in her eyes. "And what happens now?" He stepped closer, not dominating, not intimidating, just present, grounded. "Now," he said softly, "you stay, for as long as Tumo needs you." She blinked. "Stay. In this house." "No," Tuma said, tugging her hand urgently. "Stay in my room." Zuri laughed softly, wiping her tears. "Let's start with visiting." "Okay," Babail smiled gently, genuinely for the first time since his wife's passing. "Tumo is right," he said warmly. "You belong here tonight." For the first time in a very long time, Zuri felt safe. Safe enough to breathe, safe enough to hope, but she didn't see the shadow lingering in the hallway. Winter had not left the mansion, she had simply begun her revenge. Night settled over the Nidlovu mansion, not as a blanket of peace, but as a shimmering veil of tension and transformation. The corridors glowed softly under golden lights, casting gentle reflections on marble floors, polished to mirror perfection. It was a house built on power, cemented by legacy. But tonight, something unfamiliar moved within its walls. Warmth. Zuri followed Babail down a long hallway toward a private family lounge. Her heart raced, not from fear this time, but from overwhelm. Every step forward felt like crossing into a world beyond anything she had imagined. She belonged to the kind of life where dreams were luxuries, where survival came first. Now, she walked through corridors lined with paintings worth more than her entire neighborhood. "Tumo needs me," she reminded herself. "That's the only reason I'm here." Yet as she walked beside his father, this powerful, intimidating man who had become unexpectedly gentle, something deeper stirred inside her, something she didn't dare name. When they entered the lounge, a small fire crackled in the hearth. Plush armchairs surrounded a low table, set with tea, fruit, and warm pastries. A blanket lay draped over the couch as if prepared for a child. Tumo sat, curled up on the sofa, waiting. His eyes lit up the moment he saw her. Zuri. She knelt beside him, brushing a curl from his forehead. "How are you feeling now?" "Better," he said softly. "I was scared, but now I'm okay, because you're here." Her chest tightened. "I promised you I'd come. You always keep your promises," he whispered. Babail watched them from the doorway, his son clinging to a woman he had known only days, yet trusted completely. The sight struck something deep within him. It had been so long since he'd seen Tumo laugh, or look at someone with such pure affection. He cleared his throat softly. "I thought we could all talk for a few minutes before Tumo sleeps." Zuri sat carefully on the edge of the couch. Tumo immediately leaned against her side. Settling into her warmth, she wrapped an arm around him instinctively, her movements natural, motherly, even. Babail took a seat across from them. "Zuri, I know you've been through a terrible ordeal these last few days. My actions, my assumptions added to that pain." She lowered her gaze. "I understand why you were afraid." "No," he said firmly. "You shouldn't excuse me. I acted with arrogance. I judged you based on where you live, not who you are." She lifted her eyes slowly. He continued, voice heavy with sincerity. "In my world, people take advantage. They lie. They manipulate. But you gave everything you had to help a boy you didn't know. No agenda, no expectation, just kindness." Zuri felt her throat tighten. "For that," Babail said, "I owe you more gratitude than I can express." Tumo interrupted softly. "Daddy, she saved me." Babail nodded, his eyes softening as he looked at his son. "Yes, she did." Silence fell, not uncomfortable, but thick with meaning. Zuri shifted slightly, unsure of what to say. "I only did what anyone would have done." No, Babael said quietly. Not anyone. You. The way he said it, gentle, full of emotion, made her heart flutter in a strange, forbidden way. She turned to Tumo. Sweetheart, you need rest. The doctor said you still have to take your medicine. Tumo sighed but nodded. Only if you stay until I fall asleep. Babael smiled faintly. She's not going anywhere. Zuri looked between them, this fragile boy, this powerful man, and something inside her softened further. This wasn't the world she knew, but it seemed to be a world willing to embrace her, even if just for tonight. After dinner, Tumo grew tired quickly. Zuri carried him back to his room and settled him into bed. He clung to her hand as she pulled the blanket over him. Tell me a story, he whispered, eyes half closed. She smiled gently and began to speak a simple story from her childhood, one her mother used to tell her when the nights were too heavy to bear. A story about courage and kindness and the strength found in unexpected places. By the time she finished, Tumo was asleep, his breathing calm and steady. She leaned down and kissed his forehead without thinking. When she turned, Babael was standing in the doorway, watching quietly, softly. His gaze held something she had never seen in him before, something fragile and breathtaking, gratitude, admiration, and maybe a flicker of something deeper, something forbidden. She stepped out of the room and pulled the door closed gently behind her. For someone he's known only a short time, Babael murmured. He loves you deeply. Zuri looked away, flustered. He just needed someone. I was there. You were more than someone, Babael said. You were what he needed. They walked together down the hallway, neither speaking for a long moment. Finally, he said, would you join me for tea, just for a few minutes? I'd like to understand the woman who changed my son's world. She hesitated. This was dangerous territory. Yet something in his voice, in his gentle request, made her nod slowly. They returned to the lounge. The fire was softer now. Flickering low, he poured her tea with his own hands, not something a man of his status normally did. You don't have to do that, Zuri said softly. He smiled. Tonight, I want to. She accepted the cup, warming her hands around it. He studied her for a moment. Tell me about your life, before all of this. She hesitated, then began. I grew up here in the South District. My mother worked multiple jobs until she got sick. She's still sick. I've been the only one providing for us. The diner job. It was hard, but it was steady. I never had enough, but we survived. He listened quietly with full attention, not pity. That alone made her chest ache. And still, he said softly, with everything you were carrying, you gave away the little money you made. Her voice trembled. Tumo needed it more than I did. A long pause stretched between them. Zuri, he said, her name rolling off his tongue like a prayer. I don't know how to express the depth of what you've done for my family. Her cheeks warmed. You don't owe me anything. I owe you everything. Their eyes locked. Heat radiated between them, subtle, undeniable. But before the moment could deepen further, a sharp crash sounded from the far corridor. Glass shattering, metal clanging. Zuri jumped, gripping her teacup tightly. Babael stood instantly. What was that? A guard rushed into the lounge. Breathless. Sir, there's been a breach in the security wing. Someone cut the wires. We believe it was done by someone inside the house. Babael's jaw tightened. Winter. The guard nodded grimly. We think she's activated one of the archive systems. Cameras are malfunctioning. She's been seen near the east wing heading toward the communications room. Zuri's heart raced. What is she doing? Something dangerous, Babael said, eyes darkening. And I fear she's targeting you. Zuri paled. Stay behind me, he ordered. No, she said, surprising herself. If this is about me, I should face her too. He stared at her, proud, worried, unwilling, but he nodded. Together, they stepped into the shadows of the hallway. Winter was not done, and before the night ended, the truth about loyalty, power, revenge, and unexpected love would come crashing into all of them. Storm winds hammered against the mansion's gigantic windows as Babael and Zuri hurried down the corridor, the marble floor reflecting distorted streaks of lightning. The house, usually a symbol of order, wealth, and control, felt unnervingly alive tonight, pulsing with tension and echoing with distant alarms that flickered red along the ceiling. Security officers rushed through hallways like black-clad shadows, whispering into earpieces, weapons holstered but hands hovering close. Zuri stayed close behind Babael, her breath coming fast and shallow. Her palms were damp, her heartbeat pounded in her ears. She had never imagined stepping foot in a mansion like this, but she certainly never imagined running through one in the middle of the night while an unhinged assistant tried to destroy her life. "This way," Babael said firmly, guiding her with a protective arm held slightly behind him. "The communications room is at the end of the east wing. If Winter is trying to manipulate anything, records, footage, security feeds, that's where she'll be." "Will she hurt someone?" Zuri asked, voice trembling. "She's desperate," Babael said darkly. "And desperation makes people unpredictable." They turned a corner and nearly collided with two guards sprinting toward them. "Sir," one gasped, "we've shut down access to the estate server, but not before Winter transferred something onto an external device. She also disabled several cameras," the other said. "She knows exactly which blind spots to use." "Find her," Babael commanded. "Do not confront her alone." The guards nodded and ran off. Zuri felt a wave of dread rise inside her. "What is she trying to do?" "To erase everything," he answered. "Every proof of your innocence. Every record of my son's condition. Every file that shows she acted improperly." Zuri's stomach twisted. "So she can blame me again?" "Yes," he said grimly. "Or worse, pressure the police into reopening an investigation. If she controls the narrative, you could be seen as a kidnapper, even after everything you've done." Zuri felt her knees weaken. "I can't go to prison. I didn't do anything. I barely survived the last accusation." "You will not go to prison," Babael said fiercely, turning to face her fully. "I swear it. I put you in danger once. I will never allow it again." Something cracked open in her chest, a fragile, trembling warmth. Nobody had ever fought for her before. Nobody had ever said she mattered. Before she could respond, another crash shattered the hallway. A door slammed open somewhere in the east wing. "She's there," Babael said, voice tightening. "Stay close." They approached cautiously. The closer they came, the louder Winter's voice grew ragged, furious, almost frantic. "He trusts her. She walks in here like she belongs, like she's some savior. He looks at her the way he never looked at me. Never." Her voice broke into a sob, then twisted into a bitter laugh. "I won't let everything I built be stolen by a girl from the slums." Zuri's heart thudded painfully. They reached the communications door, slightly ajar. Winter stood inside the room, illuminated by multiple screens showing flashing error messages. Her hair was disheveled, her makeup smeared, her hands shaking as she clutched a USB drive. When she saw Babael and Zuri, she froze. Her eyes went wide, then narrow. "Oh," she said with a chilling smile. "Look who found each other." Babael stepped forward. "Winter, hand over the drive." She laughed, a high, sharp sound that echoed through the cold room. "Of course, because you always get what you want, don't you? The obedient staff, the perfect image, the compliant assistant, the world bending to your whims." Her gaze snapped to Zuri. "And now her, the savior of your family." Zuri swallowed. "Winter, I never wanted to take anything from you. You took everything," Winter screamed, stepping forward with unhinged rage. "Do you know how long I spent building my place here? How carefully I crafted every little piece of trust, every task, every responsibility, only to be shoved aside because you gave a hungry boy a piece of bread?" Zuri flinched. Babael moved protectively in front of her. "Winter," he said quietly, "you're hurting yourself, and you're hurting others. Let me help you." Winter blinked slowly, her expression contorting in disbelief. "Help me! Help me! You want to help me now, when it's too late." She raised the USB drive in trembling fingers. "With this?" she whispered. "I can ruin her. I can ruin you. I can prove that she manipulated your son, that she endangered him, that you were blinded because—" Her eyes darted to Zuri. "Because you feel something for her." Zuri's breath caught. Babael stiffened. The accusation hung in the air like a crack of lightning. Winter let out a humorless laugh. "There it is. Silence. That's all the confirmation I need." She stepped backward toward a console. "If I upload this, the police will come for her, and you won't be able to stop it." Zuri's voice trembled. "Winter, please. I didn't take your job. I didn't take your place. I just helped a child." "You took my future," Winter hissed. "And I will not let you keep it." She moved to insert the drive. Zuri acted first. Not with force, but with compassion. "Winter," she said softly, stepping past Babael despite his outstretched arm. "Look at me." Winter paused, hand hovering over the port. "You're not my enemy," Zuri whispered. "You're just hurting. You're afraid of being forgotten. I know that feeling. I've lived it my whole life." Winter's eyes trembled. "I'm not trying to replace you," Zuri continued. "I couldn't. You've been with this family for years. You know this house better than anyone. Tumo needs many people, not just me. There is room for all of us." Winter's lips parted, shock flickering across her face. Zuri reached her hand out. "You don't have to destroy everything out of fear," she said. "Let's stop this, together." For a moment, one fragile, shivering moment, it seemed Winter might break, might soften, might choose peace. Then, a bitter smile twisted her mouth. "You really are naive." She slammed the USB drive toward the console. But Babael lunged first. His hand clamped around her wrist with controlled strength. Winter gasped, dropping the drive. It clattered across the floor. 2 guards burst in. "Sir, take her to the secure room," Babael commanded, voice thunderous. "She needs psychological evaluation and immediate suspension from all duties." Winter's eyes widened in betrayal. "Babael, this isn't anger," he said. "This is mercy. You crossed a line. You endangered my son. You attacked an innocent woman." Guards restrained her gently but firmly. Winter's final desperate gaze shot toward Zuri. "You think you've won," she spat, "but you have no idea what being part of this world costs." The guards led her out. Silence settled. Zuri stood frozen, heart pounding, breath shaking. Babael turned to her slowly. "Are you all right?" he asked, voice low. She nodded, though tears pooled in her eyes. "I didn't want her life ruined." "You didn't ruin it," he said. "She ruined her own, and she would have ruined yours if she could." He stepped closer, so close she could feel the warmth radiating from him in the cold, tense room. "You spoke to her with compassion," he murmured, awe in his tone, "even after everything she tried to do to you." Zuri lowered her gaze. "Because she was hurting. People who hurt others are usually hurting themselves." Babael studied her with a tenderness that made her chest ache. "You saved my son," he said softly. "And tonight, you saved my family's future." Her breath caught. He gently took her hand. "I don't know what destiny has in store for us, Zuri," he whispered, "but I know you were brought into our lives for a reason." Heat bloomed in her cheeks. Before she could respond, Tumo's small voice echoed from down the hall. "Zuri." She squeezed Babael's hand softly and stepped back. "I should go to him." "Yes," Babael whispered, his eyes not leaving hers. "He needs you." But as she walked away, her heart raced with a new realization. She wasn't leaving him behind. Any of them. Tonight had changed everything, and tomorrow would change more. The mansion felt different the next morning, lighter somehow, as though the storm that had raged inside its walls had finally begun to settle. Soft sunlight filtered through the tall windows, scattering warm, golden patches across the gleaming floor. Guards moved more calmly. Staff whispered with cautious curiosity rather than fear, and the air buzzed with an undercurrent of change. But for Zuri, waking up inside one of the guest rooms felt surreal. She lay still on the plush mattress, staring at the ornate ceiling, unsure if everything from last night had been a dream. Winter's breakdown, the confrontation in the communications room, Babael's fierce protection, his tenderness, his gratitude, and above all, the way Tumo had clung to her as if she were the only home he had ever known. She touched the sleeve of the soft robe they had given her to sleep in. She had never worn anything so comfortable. For a moment, she allowed herself to simply breathe. Then a knock sounded on the door. "Zuri," Tumo's small voice called. "Are you awake?" She smiled softly. "Come in." The door burst open, and Tumo ran inside dressed in clean pajamas, his curls brushed neatly, his fever completely gone. He jumped onto the bed beside her and wrapped his arms around her waist. "You didn't disappear," he whispered, her heart squeezed painfully, full of affection. "Of course not. I said I'd be here in the morning." He pulled back, beaming. "Daddy said we could have breakfast together. In the family dining room." Zuri blinked. "Breakfast? With both of you?" "Yes," Tumo clapped excitedly. "Come on, I'll show you." He grabbed her hand and tugged her gently toward the door. She laughed, following him through the bright corridor. As they neared the dining room, delicious aromas of pastries, fruit, and warm bread drifted through the air. When the doors opened, Zuri froze. Babael stood at the head of the long table, not in a sharp suit like before, but in a soft sweater and slacks, looking unexpectedly relaxed. His expression softened the moment he saw her. "Good morning, Zuri." Her cheeks warmed. "Good morning. You slept well, I hope." She nodded shyly. "Yes, thank you. I'm not used to this kind of comfort." "You deserve comfort," he said gently. She looked away, flustered. Tumo guided her to the seat beside him, and the three of them began eating together. It was simple, talking about small things, laughing at Tumo's silly jokes, sharing quiet glances, but every moment felt like a thread, weaving them together into something that resembled a family. Halfway through the meal, Babael cleared his throat. "Zuri, after everything that has happened, I want to do something meaningful for you." She stiffened. "Please, I don't want money." He shook his head. "I didn't offer money." She looked at him, confused. He continued gently. "I want to help your mother." Her breath caught. "My mother?" "Yes," he said. "Your neighbor mentioned she is ill. I've already contacted a specialist. They can see her today if you wish." Tears welled instantly in her eyes. You didn't have to." "I know," he said softly, "but I want to." She covered her mouth with trembling fingers. "I don't know how to thank you." "You already did," he replied. "You saved my son." Her tears slipped freely now, warm against her cheeks. And when she met his eyes across the table, something deep and unspoken passed between them, a connection neither fully understood yet, but both felt intensely. After breakfast, Babael invited her to walk through the gardens with him, while Tumo played under the supervision of two gentle guards. The garden was breathtaking, lush paths, delicate fountains, vibrant flowers blooming in vivid colors. Birds fluttered between branches, and the morning light warmed the quiet air. They walked slowly, their steps falling in rhythm. "Zuri," Babael said after a long pause, "I have something to ask you." She looked up at him, curiosity flickering in her gaze. "I would like you to stay with us," he said. "Not temporarily, not just as a visitor. I'd like you to stay as part of our lives." She froze. He continued, voice steady, heartfelt. "Tumo needs someone who brings him peace. Someone who listens to him. Someone who treats him not like an heir, but like a child who deserves love." "Mikan." Her heartbeat quickened, but he wasn't finished. "And I find myself wanting you here as well." Her breath hitched. "I don't mean to overwhelm you," he added quickly. "You don't have to decide now, or ever. I just wanted you to know that you have a place here, not as a servant, not as a charity case, but as someone we value deeply." Zuri looked away, overwhelmed. Babail, your world is nothing like mine. That's precisely why we need you, he murmured. You see the world differently. You have a heart that refuses to turn cold. But what would people say? She whispered. People always talk, he replied. But I only care about the truth. And what is the truth? She asked softly. He stopped walking, stopped inches away from her. His voice dropped to a tender murmur. The truth is, I admire you more than I can express. Her cheeks flushed, her breath trembling. I care about you, he continued, more than I expected to, more than is convenient, but I will not hide that anymore. For a moment, the world seemed to stand still, the wind paused, the birds quieted, her heartbeat thundered louder than anything around them. But before she could respond, Tumo ran toward them, giggling. Zuri, Daddy, look what I found. He held up a small flower, bright red. Babail stepped back slightly, giving her space, his expression gentle. Zuri knelt to take the flower from Tumo, her hands still shaking. It's beautiful, she whispered. Just like you, Tumo said innocently. Zuri laughed, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. Babail watched her, watched the way she smiled, the way the sunlight caught her features, the way she looked at Tumo with a love that came naturally, effortlessly. And he knew, without any doubt, that she belonged with them. When Tumo ran back toward the fountain, Zuri stood and faced Babail again. I don't know where this will lead, she said softly. But I'm willing to try. Relief washed across his face like sunlight breaking through clouds. You won't regret it, he whispered. But as they walked back toward the mansion together closer now, steps in sync, souls tentatively reaching for each other, someone else watched from a distant window. Winter, released from security but not from her anger, her eyes burned with cold fury as she saw Zuri smiling beside the man she admired and the child she once tended. This isn't over, she whispered. Not to Zuri, not to the Nidlovu family, not even to herself. But for now, in the garden's warm embrace, Zuri felt something she had not felt in years. Hope, a new beginning, a new family, a new future. And no matter what storms lay ahead, she knew she was no longer facing them alone.